Welcome, everybody. It is now 11. If you have not entered your name and library, please do that so that you get credit for attending this meeting. Some of us, this is our second, like Macy and Bethany. We've already been in one Zoom meeting and now we're coming to Zoom 2. So if we're kind of, the other thing I'm saying, I'm sucking on a Jolly Rancher because I'm losing my voice. So hopefully it'll hold out for the rest. So if I'm doing weird things, that's what's going on. All right, let's go ahead and jump in. A couple of these things are just things that have come to my attention over the past month. And so I thought it's never wrong to just remind people of kind of the way that we typically might do things. So think about the difference between a title hold and a copy hold. A title hold, you would just go in, say, yes, I want this item, and the system, based on proximity settings and your settings on and on, is going to pick the one that it's going to target and send it to you. It could be anything on that bib record, as opposed to an item hold or copy hold, which is I want that particular one, and that's the only one that will fill my hold. So I just wanted to have a quick discussion about it. What do people think are the appropriate uses of copy holds versus title holds?
We use copy holds a lot to fix specific items. So for maintenance accounts.
Kara, are you speaking? We can't hear you. Okay. The other thing that I thought of is book clubs, where they're going to predominantly pull from your hub. And so I'll just take Trails, for example. If Trails has 3 of those copies that I need and nobody else in our hub has them, I'm going to steal all of Trails copies for my book club. So sometimes if I notice that that is what is going on, I'll kind of pick and choose some things that are outside of my hub so that it doesn't rob my hub of, or one particular library of every single item that they had, every copy they had of that item. Typically, copy holds are not what we would normally do. So I'm encouraging you to go with the title hold, unless it's like Jennifer said, I need to get that particular item back because I need to fix something on it. Or the book clubs. Can anybody think of anything else?
And Rhonda, sometimes if we have a patron in front of us, like for example, we don't allow juveniles to check out DVDs. So let's say at home, the family sat down on their computer and the kid requested a DVD and it's come from like North Kansas City. Well, we don't want to just say, nope, sorry. So we'll go into the parent's card and we'll place an item hold on the one we have in hand. And then we cancel the transit, check it in, and it should ready it for the parent. And then we can check it out.
Good thinking.
Yeah, we do the same thing. Like if somebody, if we have something at one of our other branches and it's there right now, we call them, make sure it's there, and then we place an item hold on that item so the patron can actually get it, and it triggers the hold slip for them.
Okay, any other suggestions?
Yeah, we've had situations where a patron's brought back a book and said, I told my friend about this book and she wants to read it now. And so if there are no other holds, we'll put a hold on that specific copy to reduce transit times and, make that patron happy quicker.
Perfect. All right. All good ideas, just reminders. Most of you know these things, but let's just remind ourselves. I had a question come into me about, no, it's under the notes section. using and removing blocks, it comes up as that staff_CHR, which means you are not going to be able to circulate anything. You can't do anything with holds, and you can't do anything with renewals, hence the CHR. So it is a lot easier. Notes are a whole lot easier to use than they used to be. When they upgraded a few versions ago, it made it a lot easier to remove. So basically, as far as just removing it, you would click the box in front of your note in the Notes tab, go to Actions and hit Remove. That takes the block off of your account. Does that make sense? Questions about how you would remove a block?
I actually have a question.
Yeah.
Sometimes or in the past, I would put a block on a patron's account, but because my permissions are different, then the frontline staff could not remove it.
Oh,
But I believe it did allow them to archive it, which then removed the block, which we prefer to archive our stuff anyway, so.
As far as permissions, would they be able to at least edit the note to change it from a block to like just an alert?
I don't know. I think they were allowed to archive it. And I don't know if edit lets you change the type.
it does.
Does it? Okay. Then it might do that.
Cass has run into that problem before. If an admin person puts the note on a regular, just a circ admin person out at the desk would not be able to remove it. Another admin person would have to remove it. Okay. Typically, I mean, we don't use blocks very often, at least in my library. The only reason that we would tend to do that would be something has come back in and it's damaged or missing a piece, and we've tried to call them and we've tried to email them, and all of their contact information is incorrect. So we'll put a block on their account, and the message would be, unblock this patron as soon as you have told them about whatever their issue is. What does anybody else use blocks for?
We use blocks for hotspots. So if something's overdue, any like electronic devices, it creates a block. If they're a problematic patron and we've had to kick them out, we use blocks. If they have a damaged item, we'll use a block sometimes, just depending on the item. I feel like we use them quite a bit, especially for hotspots.
And I'm with Macy. We do in our previous system, we relied on blocks a lot to keep communication open among staff members about patron issues. So,
Which is a little bit easier now with the alert field. You can, depending upon how broad you send out the message, you can do that with an alert and not necessarily block the patron. Belinda, did you have, I kind of saw you shaking your head there.
good to know. Thank you.
Macy and I use blocks the same way. Typically, we use for damaged items or missing discs, we use the system to do that on its own without so staff aren't having to learn something separate. But usually if there's a note, it's because they need to talk to an administrator before their account can be added because something has happened in the past. So usually our block is they have to talk to myself or Shannon as the director before they can get their account restarted for whatever reason.
Perfect. Okay, Darcy, are you still here?
I am.
Okay, do you want to go in and talk about the next evergreen item condition report idea?
Sure. We probably on a regular basis, I have staff come to me and say, hey, this book isn't in the best shape, but it's it's the only one in the consortium and we'd rather people use it till it dies. And there's a lot of differences, of course. There are the best practices, like this is what's damaged, this is what's not. This is what's wear and tear in everyday use. And so my thought was if we, it could be maybe a best practice. If we have a book that like, gosh, I don't know, like a junky John Jakes paperback that nobody else has or something that somebody at, you know, your library is dying to read. Well, that's fine. We're probably not going to replace it. And so we could have a slip where we put it inside the item before we send it, like, hey, this isn't in the best condition, but we know that, so don't worry about us thinking that your patron damaged it. And obviously it's good practice to, like if the spine's broken, well, let's fix it before we send it. But there are items that just are never gonna get better. But I mean, as long as they're readable, we feel like, but then also I think of like, well, what if somebody requests the book and out of the whole consortium, they get our junky, VC Andrews book that's from 1985. Anyway, I was just thinking it would save, because if I received a book and they already know this looks like this. Okay, let's move on. It would save my staff coming to me being like, oh, we don't want them to think that. Anyway, that was great.
Okay.
Doesn't Riverside Regional use little stickers that they put in their book that they circulate? Like, hey, we know this item's damaged, but we're gonna still circulate it.
Ooh, I like that idea.
Yes, I saw that one day and I was like, that's genius.
We write in the front if there is specific damage.
Yeah.
But I was thinking more along the lines of like, this is just really old and in terrible shape. But yeah, we definitely write in the front, but I like the idea of a sticker or a stamp.
Yes, yeah. We've floated that idea for a few weeks now using those stickers. I think it's Riverside Regional.
We use item alerts on check-in and check-out. Because we've got one book that has never circulated here, but y'all seem to love it. I've done the best I could to keep it going, but it's a waste of it's like Darcy was saying, it's kind of a waste of time for everybody to be filling out slips for a book we all know is not in good shape. So I just put those item alerts as, as it comes in from the courier, the first thing they're going to see is, yeah, we know this book is bad, just let it ride.
That's a really good idea. And that would save time. I just think of the people that bring them to me before they scan them in.
How do we actually do that? Because I do check in here at my desk. So where would I find item alerts?
You wanting to add it or just see it?
It's as you catalog the item, I believe it's in the fourth column. I mean, hold on here. I've just gotten done cataloging so I can look. Because you're in your holdings editor screen. It's the fourth column under miscellaneous. It says add item alerts. And you can just click on that box, say every time this book normally checks out, I want this message to pop up. And that's where I do that.
You can also do it from item status too, if that's easier for you, as long as you have the alerts column selected.
Well, and I think if we had a best practice to do either or, like maybe I want my circ staff to just write on a piece of paper, and maybe if there's something that gets checked out all the time, like, okay, I'll do an item alert. But I think either or would be a great best practice, just if we're sending stuff like that.
This is Carol in Cuba, and one of the things I do is I write I open the inside cover, and on that first page I always write, like especially if it's a minor thing and I keep getting slips on it, then I'll just write on there that we've noted a small stain on page 125 and the date, so that they don't keep sending me back tickets every time.
So this might also just be a staff training issue, that we look for, open up that front page and see if perhaps a note has already been written in there. That's going to take like 3 seconds to pop that up. But the other thing, who originally asked how to do item alerts?
Me.
Who is me?
Oh, I'm sorry. Stacy. Stacy
Okay.
Cook from West Plains.
Okay. I can shoot you. I have a handout that we've handed out before in CERC refresh trainings that I can shoot to you.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay. And that was West Plains, right?
Yes.
Can you send that to all of us, Rhonda?
Why, sure. I'll
Thank
just send
you.
it to MECirc and to the general listserv.
That would be awesome.
All right, perfect. All right, with moving on with MLC coming on, which we're so thrilled that they're here now. They requested to add in a 1 month hold protection category. So you probably have already seen that pop up, but if you haven't, there is a new category now where you can keep your items for 1 month, 3 months, or 6 months. So just wanted to make sure that you were aware if you want to take advantage of that. Ron, bless his heart, has added 2 new contact lists. It's in the contact information tab of the MEC website. And so that's MEC libraries with their address and MEC libraries with their address / courier hub. So kind of gets it all in one easier to find place instead of having to scroll through multiple things to find it.
Thank you, Ron.
I know, I bet that was a lot of work, but thank you.
It wasn't as much work as you would think it was. Steve Potter is suggesting, though, not to rely too heavily on that hub list, because if Mala updates their hubs and doesn't tell us, which I've already found out that has been the case, that list is going to get outdated really quickly, and that kind of out of our control. But there is a live link to the Mala hub information under member resources. And then you go down to general member resources. And a live link to the Henry Courier hubs is listed there.
Okay. Moving on. We've had just in this month, a couple of different people have emailed me with questions on what to do when one of your patrons pass away. And I don't know that there's necessarily a best practice, but I would like to hear what multiple libraries do. Maybe we're all doing it the same way and we just don't know that we are, but it might help somebody else when that situation comes up.
I've dealt with this a few times, Rhonda. Typically, I don't have any items out. Most of the time, the patron has not been well enough for quite a while to take on items, or they have an authorized user who has been picking up items for them, and that person is already on the account and knows what's out and is able to take it in. So usually, I don't have to deal with items. What I do when they notify me is we have a newspaper. We're not super huge, so I kind of just double check to make sure there's an obituary somewhere. But again, usually this is an authorized user who's already telling me this. Occasionally it's a lawyer who's settling the estate that's dealing with it. And what I do is I will expire out their card for the date of death. And then I will just put back to those notes, I will put an alert note that will pop up in that left-hand corner that says obituary for this date. And that way it's going to be obvious if staff accidentally click into that because, you know, their child who has the same name tries to renew their library card, that doesn't accidentally get renewed. So those are the 2 big things that I do is just expire the card out and then follow up with that alert note just so staff see it if they're trying to go through accounts or things like that. But then, like I said, as far as the books, most of the time they have not been with us or it's someone trying to settle an estate and they have paperwork that they can hand to me that says they're in charge of the estate or they're in charge of this, and I'm able to talk to that person about whatever is on the account. And lots of times we have an appeal process. A lot of times we just forgive anything that is out unless it's going to be a phenomenal amount. But most of the time people are able to go home to the house and find those books and bring them back. So that's how we're handling it, Poplar Bluff.
We do it pretty similar to Poplar Bluff, although sometimes if it's been long enough, sometimes it'll be like 5 months ago and they find out, I will just delete the account. As long as there's nothing on the account. We actually just had an instance about 2 weeks ago where a woman was potentially murdered by her husband. Yes, it's a big story for our small town. And her friend actually contacted us and she had hotspots out. I mean, it was going to be like $300+ of fines. So what I did, I checked those in and then I marked them as missing. So they weren't connected to her account just because after going through all of that, I don't want to make anybody financially responsible for that. But it just depends on the situation sometimes. That's a weird one.
I know there's the very first thing we tend to do in Cass County is to make that card inactive, so that nobody can use it. Like, I don't know which one of you said, if they have, whoever comes in to tell us is usually an authorized person, and we, convey to them what is on their card. And, we always love it when we get those things back, but like, I think it was Belinda, we typically write those things off. However, we have not had the situation where any of the materials belonged to anybody else other than Cass County. So what is the circulation, community's feel for what you do on a case like that, where the patron has a book that belongs to Neosho or to Scenic or, whoever you are, not you. What should we do?
Yeah, so this was my question to you, Rhonda, the other day, and
Right.
it actually just happened to us. And I've been thinking about it since. First of all, I want to say that I did not think about inactivating the card. That's a great solution across the board on the other things. But for this, I'm guessing, wouldn't we handle this just like my patron lost one of your books or damaged one of your books, and just contact that other library and find out how they want to handle it? If they need to be paid for the book, then they need to send me an invoice for that book. And then we'll just deal with it on our end, probably by forgiving the charge on the patron side, is what I'm thinking. So
That's exactly what I would do, Terry. I'd treat it like somebody had dropped it in the bathtub and I wasn't going to send it back through the courier, and contact that library and deal with it how we normally would. That way it's not a separate process for our staff.
yeah, and it's pretty few and far between. We're not talking about a daily occurrence by any means. So yeah, I've thought about it since. I don't think there has to be a consortium agreement. I don't think that, but if you guys think otherwise, I feel like just communicating with each other is the solution.
I tend to agree, but I think it's nice that we're all here as a group kind of discussing, because if somebody has a different idea or a better way that we haven't thought about, I always love finding those things out. And so
100%. That's what I love about this meeting more than anything else. I'm sorry I'm always late because I have another meeting right before it usually. But I can't wait to hear this meeting because I've learned something every single time we've had this meeting. So yeah.
Okay, any other ideas? I guess the other thing, if we once we make them inactive, I can speak English, make them inactive, we will tend to go ahead and purge that patron, just so that there is no chance whatsoever that anything could somebody finds a library card and starts putting things on that card.
Well,
just-
I had that scenario, Rhonda. I had a grandson using a grandmother's card, and yeah, he racked up about $500 worth of materials because of that one thing. It hadn't been inactive, and he had been listed initially as a authorized user. So that little button can really save your bacon.
I have a question on the financial side of that. So we have a new patron that passed away, and she racked up a little over $400 in charges. And the mom didn't know if she could find the items, and they hadn't been in the apartment. So I went to my director, and she said we would probably just write it off. But what do we do? Is there someone that we report that to for a financial write-off? So we can like potentially be reimbursed, like say if it was just our personal library and we loaned our books to someone, and like at the end of the year, if we done a write-off, we would get that back when we done our taxes. Who do we report that to?
Probably whoever does your taxes, or whoever does your revenue at your, like it would be, for me, it would be my director. And you could run a report of all those things that are forgiven or voided or whatever.
Because she wasn't sure and I was unclear because she's newer, our director's newer. So I wanted to try to find out that answer. So it may help us out in the long run.
Yeah, you can run that report.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
When I say write-off, I just mean we don't care about the money. So Copperwood Library is not doing it for tax purposes. We're just saying that that's not in our view, and we don't care about it. I shouldn't say we don't care about it anymore, but we're not going to worry about it.
Well,
So that's what I mean by write-off.
Yeah, it's in I guess it relates to good customer service, and it's just part of the cost of doing business, I guess would be how Cass County would look at it.
Okay. Thank you.
Steve, I see your hand raised. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to share, if I could, because I definitely have dealt with that sort of question several times in the past. And, in terms of writing off, yeah, I mean, typically, for a for-profit or even a not-for-profit, you'd write this off relative to taxes. We don't have anything like that. About as close as you can come is for insurance purposes, but what you're talking about there would be a huge loss, because your deductible is going to be so significant that you're not necessarily so it's going to have to be somebody who like checks out 10% of your library and takes it home with them, and then there's a fire and then you might be able to actually begin to start getting that. But it's the different types of accounting for the not. Well, we're not even not-for-profits, we're governmental entities. So we typically don't even file it there. But I used to always encourage people when they did have fires and disasters and things is to, include their library materials in their report to their insurance company to see if that can help. But yeah, generally speaking, it was just a matter of them proving that they had sustained something and then deleting it and no longer holding them accountable. I think that's the shorthand. Most librarians, when librarians say write it off, that's what they mean, is that they're just deleting it from the database, not holding the patron accountable, but also realizing you're never going to be made whole.
Well, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Steve, while you're still here, let's just flip that order a little bit. Would you like to speak a little bit about Message B?
I was actually putting together an email, and I'm going to make sure to send that out to everyone on this, as well as the CERC list. Once I get everything, before the end of the day. So yeah, I've got a couple of things that I can share. I mean, based on what we're seeing, it looks like it's working pretty well. We have migrated what Rogan and I have been doing is we've been migrating a set of messages, generic messages, to Message B, and as we activate those, we're deactivating the messages in the native Evergreen system. So as you might remember from Message B, what's happening is Message B is, right now everything's sort of going through this gateway, but depending upon the day and the direction the wind's blowing, you may or may not be able to send to T-Mobile that day or Verizon the next day. And so all of this is supposed to be fixing that. All of your messages should be coming out from I believe it's a 660 Missouri phone number that I think I shared with everybody, so that you can notify your patrons about that. And then we started doing a series of essentially a courtesy notice, overdue notices,
Your hold is
a
here.
privilege. Yeah, just all the different notices that we've been working on. But we've also started identifying, and everything seems to be working okay. What the bumps that we're getting right now, or what we're getting reported is when things aren't working, it's because it's a message that's still originating out of the Evergreen system. So it's not really a message B problem. It's something that we haven't turned off from our legacy system yet, is where we're seeing problems. So the next things that we're working on, and this is what the email is going to be talking about. One of the messages that we're going to be that we're looking to deactivate is the lost message. So there's a handful of libraries. Almost all libraries, from what we can tell, handle lost and billed items through a paper or an email notification. You typically don't use a text message for this, but there's a few libraries that do. And frankly, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm just going to say it doesn't, because text messages are limited to 160 characters. You're probably going to want to put in the title of the book and when you checked it out and the price and all of that. And so this is getting to be a really huge text message. So what we're going to do is this is one of the first one that's going to happen pretty soon, is we're going to deactivate the text message for bills and loss. You'll still be sending bills and loss through mail and through email, but not through text anymore. And part of this is because we're trying to limit, our limit's 160 characters. So if we get to 161 characters, then that costs us twice as much. It's not like every text message is free for us. So we're trying to keep everything small and generic in that respect. So that's one that's coming. Another one that we are not dealing, or one that we are not moving over, is the validation of the text number. So when you register a patron and you put in the text number for text messages, they'll get a notification that says, this is the library has this as your text number, just to make sure that they've got it. That's still coming out of Evergreen, but but we're eliminating the rest of it. The other thing that we are totally convinced of, or that we know, is you probably won't have to be asking about the text carrier anymore. Because it won't matter. If we're sending it to message B, it won't matter anymore. So you shouldn't have to do that. And I think Rhonda and I've kind of talked back and forth on this. I'm a big believer that we should never capture personal information just in case. Just in case we go back to a different way, we shouldn't be capturing the text data. So I think we're going to be able to get away from trying to figure out, the different carriers, which is a good step. So a few more of those messages. Like I said, I'm writing an email message. I'm going to stop here in a second, but I'm writing out an email message that actually outlines the other messages that we're investigating to see if we can eliminate them. But that's kind of where we are with message B. So yeah.
I missed something you said earlier. What about the courtesy notices? I had a patron in yesterday that told me she is not receiving her courtesy notices.
I've noticed that too.
Yeah, courtesy notices should be going out.
I have on my personal phone, and there's two, Andy said it too, that courtesy notices and overdues, but no hold available is going out. That I have noticed.
Trying to think about hold available.
And I have tested it on my personal phone, and I have not had a hold available messages.
Yeah, we did a staff test too, and we didn't get one either.
Okay, but a hold available is a big deal for me. So let me. I haven't heard anything about hold available notices. So let me check on that one.
Thank you.
So back on not having to capture the carrier for the phone number, when you enter a phone number in that default /SMS number, it requires you to fill that next field out. So we'll have to have that turned off to require that carrier, right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Rogan and I have been talking about that. And as we get to that right point, we're going to start masking that so that it's no longer required. Presuming that everybody didn't say, no, we want to put that back in. So, I mean, I'm hearing most people say that you would be fine with not doing that as long as
that would
everything still
change
works.
what's on Webby of filling out that form.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, if they
Awesome.
mask it, it just won't be there.
Yeah.
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 And how's the for entering the digits? I heard some controversy about this because we were going to do message B before. They want the what is it? 6 and 4 is 10. So 10 digits all as one, or with the hyphen between the prefix and the. So 417 dash 389 dash, or just 417 389 5681 or whatever.
They unique management or the message B people have not said a thing to me about that. So I don't know if Rogan is stripping that, if there is variance, if he's stripping that out before he sends it. So I will check on that though.
She's trying to download DoorDash. She's
Because I had that in my message notes.
And she's trying to download DoorDash. I'm trying to talk to her over the phone. Would that be something that would fall under homebound that I could just go to her and help her?
You can. Be careful. She's sick.
Yeah.
Hey Scott, can you mute for a second, Scott? Thanks. Okay, more. So the other thing is, when I'm hearing you talk about the holds available, if there is a problem with dashes, I'm wondering if that's part of the problem too. So I'm going to check on all of that. But yes, hold notices should definitely be coming out. So
should we be calling them right now until we know for sure that those messages are going out? Because there for a while, we've had to call every patron that had signed up for text. And my staff asked me yesterday if it was currently working, but obviously the availability is still off on it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, this is the first I'm hearing that holds is an issue. Holds are, I mean, obviously one of the reasons we're doing this is for holds. So I would expect this to be working. So, so yes, if you are discovering that this is, that your patrons are not being notified about their holds, then I think it's good customer service to try to get them notified about their holds, but also know that this has just become a super top priority for me to deal with here in the next 5 minutes. So
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Steve, do we have a definitive word yet as to when the notices within Evergreen were sent out? Usually a 30-minute lag. You said that these might be a batch load thing, that it's the next day. Do we have a definitive answer on that yet?
I don't recall that I asked specifically. I mean, I was just doing this based on what I was seeing, because I keep seeing, because every time Rogan sends something to Unique, he sends me an email message and it looks like it's being done batch at like 3 o'clock in the morning, sort of thing is when it's getting sent. Now the messages themselves don't actually get sent until I think 8 a.m. I think we don't actually send out messages except between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. and we avoid holidays and things like that. But Ron, I think that the actual processing is occurring, is still occurring overnight. I will verify with Rogan because I haven't asked him directly, but based on, whenever he says, okay, I turned this off, I sent this over, it's always like 3 a.m.
So like a book that I processed this morning and had at my circulation desk at 10 a.m., the person's not going to know it's there waiting for them until 8 a.m. Wednesday. If
they're relying on the text message to notify them, that would be correct. But if they, if they're using the Hemlock app, which could be pushing a notification, or they happen to just check their patron record, then they would see it, of course.
Will that be the case?
That's my understanding. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Laura.
So my understanding is that if it gets checked in, like Ron said, on Wednesday, they won't get it until Thursday, 8 a.m. Is that going to be continuous for the rest of our time here, or is that going to be fixed? Or I don't know what my question is.
Well, I would wonder if there's the ability to do multiple batch loads throughout the day. So like a 10 or a noon, and then maybe a 3, and then or is it one standard process overnight?
It's usually one standard process overnight, is what I've been seeing. And I don't know that you necessarily want that. I mean, it all depends on how, the holds notices are set up to begin with. So, I mean, if you end up, trapping the hold, accepting the hold, it's still in the workroom, but it's not on the shelf, but it's sending out a text, and then somebody comes in and says, hey, where's my book? And then you're having to look 15 different places because you haven't been able to shelve it yet. I mean, I think it's okay to have a lag. It's just, how is less than a day enough? Is less than a day too much? Because that's what it is. I mean, it's less than a day is the amount of lag time. But let me follow up on this, because we really haven't talked about this. I've been doing some assumptions based on what I'm seeing, and yeah, I mean, and a piece of this is, again, to try to keep the number of text messages as small as possible. I mean, we don't want to send somebody, multiple text messages because they haven't picked up their hold yet. It'll be kind of nagging, number one, and number two, it'll cost us, 9/10 of a cent or whatever it is for each one of those messages that we sent. So.
Well, they don't get multiples, do they? I mean, when a hold is fulfilled and awaiting, that's the only message they get, isn't it?
I don't know. I mean,
Okay.
I really
Okay.
don't know, because I mean, I don't know if they would run it again, and if the hold hasn't been picked up, if they'd be notified again.
I don't
It's
think
possible,
so.
not possible.
We don't now. We don't
Yeah.
now. It doesn't work that
Well,
way now, so I doubt it.
but it's a different system.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure.
So,
So
because
so let-
email, they're going to get their email notice for us like 30 minutes to an hour after we've scanned that book, right? So if they've got email, they're going to know before they get that text the next day. Huh.
which again is good.
Yeah,
I mean, that's fine.
it's like a second reminder if they didn't
Right.
come that first day. Yeah.
Right.
It'd be kind of confusing if they get the text the next day and they already have the book as well.
Yes, I agree.
And then I know from a rural area, we have a lot of people that live outside, they come into town. And so if the book was there that morning, they could have maybe picked it up, say, as they were going home from work. And then now they're not going to be able to until the very next day.
So now we need to extend our email times a little bit to 6 or 7 hours after we've scanned the item to match up closer.
Well, perhaps what we really need to do is let Steve check into some of this and find out what is actually happening. Because at this point, it's all supposition. And let him check into what he can find out from Rogan, and then he can pass that information on. I'm giving you a task here, Steve. Are you okay with that?
No, I've got the notes that I'm checking on the dashes and the phone numbers. I'm trying to figure out when things are processed and the potential impact of that, and then most importantly, checking on the holds available that's not going out. I mean, I think that's probably first and foremost and most important. So.
And if there is a difference, like in the timing, so let's just say our emails are going out right an hour after, we want to switch that around, right? Match up with the text notices. I think could we do that? Match our email notices, because I feel like we set that timing, didn't we, ourselves?
You set that as a library.
As a library,
right?
Yeah, that's in your library settings.
My
Yeah, you
library
can do
would
that.
want to switch to match up more with that, because I have the same rule problem that Leanne has. I have people that know that cart comes and plan their whole. They go to the dentist that day. They go to the Walmart that day. So blah blah blah. Whatever.
Well, I can see the confusion of if I get an email and then the next day I get a text message. I have a lot of patrons that get a lot of holds, so they're going to think those are two separate items, and they're going to come and think, "Oh, well, you sent me a text this morning." It's like, well, that was the one you got yesterday.
Yeah, and it also depends on when they picked it up. So for example, if they got an email, like say for example, they got an email in the morning, they picked it up in the afternoon, a text wouldn't be sent out because it had already been picked up. I mean, even though the message, even though the report doesn't go to message B until 3 a.m., it's not like it captures all the things all day long until 3 a.m. It just runs it at 3 a.m. for whatever's available. So that may not have answered a question, or it may have just confused things more. But I can definitely check on all those things. So
Thank you.
yep.
Can I just say, Steve, I got my first one as a patron and it was fantastic and I loved it and it made me so happy because there wasn't any gobbledygook. It's going to be easy for my patrons to read. So thank you so much.
Yes.
It was
amen.
wonderful to open that up this weekend and it was perfect.
Yep. I felt the same way. It was outstanding.
Well, lots of thanks to all of you. I mean, several of you gave me input and assistance, and it helped considerably. So, yep, I can keep working on it. And it's one of these things we just had to get it going so that it was going. And I think that there's going to be a lot of time for us to tweak and fine tune it, but we're still sort of in the implementation phase right now. So.
Once you find out about the holds, are you going to send out an email about that?
About the things I'm following up on, yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. I mean, I'm actually like over on my other screen right now, I'm working on an email to talk about some of the things that we were just talking about that I'm going to send out to this group as well as to the larger CERT group. So, other people in your library may be asking you questions because I'm sending it to them as well. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We kind of got out of order, so I'm going to go back.
Sorry.
That's okay. No, you were here. I didn't want something else to come up and then you were gone. So, the next thing I'd like to talk about is something that we added just today. I added it, updating patron accounts that belong to other Missouri Evergreen libraries. So there was a situation where a patron from one library asked that a hold would be picked up at a different MEC library. They went there, they picked up the hold. The staff at the other library renewed the card. And the problem with that was this patron was a non-resident who, to have his card be renewed, there was a fee that needed to be collected with that renewal. That did not happen. And so I don't know. I just think perhaps it's a best practice that we don't modify anybody else's patrons at all. I mean, if obviously we can go in and mark one of our items damaged and that does change something on another patron, another library's account, but we are not, I don't know. I'm just saying we are not, I'm the boss, but it just seems like we should not modify anybody else's library patrons. The reason, one of the reasons that it happened though, was because the person who actually did the renewing had, their permissions were general staff. And Belinda and I are working, we're going to get back to it, I promise, but we were waiting till all the MLC libraries came in before we went back to work on these permissions. But general staff just seems like, okay, you're a general staff person. You're not necessarily CERC, you're not necessarily cataloging, but in reality, general staff has global permissions. And so, Belinda, correct me if I'm wrong, but our hope is to get rid of general staff. So if you have somebody in your organization, in your library, that is their permission, even if it's a secondary permission, consider moving them to the correct cataloging or circulating or admin, whichever it is, but removing that general staff permission, because this person, I mean, and I don't think they didn't do it to cause trouble, is they could, and so they did. But this permission gives global things consortium wide, that we probably don't want our regular staff members being able to have. So bottom line is, if you have somebody in that with those permissions, consider moving them out of that permission, because eventually, depending on how fast we can get it done, that's going to go away.
And Rhonda, that would be probably, I don't know, frontline circ staff that might be on the meeting would not be the one who does that. So that maybe needs an email to directors.
Well,
Get
Terry,
that?
if
I don't know.
you could do that, but I'm not a director, so unless I email them all individually,
No,
I
I
can't.
get it. Never mind. I was
can't
thinking that
do
you had
that.
access to that. Well, I was
Yeah.
just trying to think, because I know a lot of the staff that probably are on this don't have any ability to do that. So I was trying to figure out the best way to make sure that happens. So,
Right.
okay. I'll think about it.
Okay, then the other thing I would like to bring up is, unless you are a reciprocal library, don't check out material to other MEC patrons. If you have signed the reciprocal borrowing agreement, that means your library has made the choice that you are willing to allow anybody from Missouri Evergreen to walk in and with their card, check out materials at your physical location. If you have not signed that agreement, please don't do that. It will make for an uncomfortable conversation, though. I'm just going to say that right from the get-go. Basically, it's like, unfortunately, I cannot check this item out, but I can send it to your home library. And nobody likes to say no to people when they come in. We're all librarians are programmed to help. We want to get people what they want. But the CERC policy clearly says there's no expectation that you can walk into just any library and use your card unless they are a reciprocal borrowing library. So again, this would be one of those cases where if that had taken place, the person would never have gotten their card renewed, and it wouldn't have caught, it's the cascading effect. So this might be a training thing for your libraries, just to make sure your people, frontline staff, know whether you are reciprocal or not. And if you are not, how would you like them to handle it? What would you like them to say to the patron who's coming in?
Rhonda, there's a question on the chat.
Okay, I don't have it up. What does it say?
It says, why is it a problem to check out to them? Can't they return it anyways?
Okay, well, all right, here we go into the reciprocal borrowing discussion. Technically, they can check it out. We're all able to check it out. But the problem comes into when a Cass County patron, let's say, well, Trails is somebody who's not reciprocal goes to I go to their library and check it out. It's going to be checked out with the library's rules of where they checked out for the first checkout. So how long they can keep it, what the fines are, all of that is determined by where they actually checked it out. But if they keep the item and then it renews, now it renews back under Cass County's rules. So that when it renews, it's now under my rules. So if one library has fines and the other library doesn't, there's confusion of how did these fines get onto this account? I thought your library was fine free. So that's one of the biggest issues. Linda, can you remember the other things that we've?
As a reciprocal borrowing library, like we have signed the agreement, that's probably the biggest thing that you run into. And if your staff are not trained for it, it becomes very complicated very quickly. Even a lot of my older staff know how to do it, but we run into it so infrequently here at Poplar Bluff that my newer staff will be like, I don't understand why there's fines. I don't understand why they can't use it. And I can immediately tell them, who does it say actually did the fine? Usually it's not us, usually it's another library. And then there's the question of how do we handle it? How do they pay for it? And so that's probably, like Rhonda said, the biggest issue. And I would say, just from a staff training standpoint, if you are not a reciprocal borrowing library and it's not part of your training and it's not part of your staff knowledge, it can become very diluted very quickly and difficult to handle, because usually those libraries that assess daily fines or things like that, there's a reason that they need to do that.
Okay, so I see a question from Ferguson. Fines are determined by the library that you actually check it out at. But if my Cass County person who is used to being fine-free goes into a library that does have fines and ends up getting fines, then they're going to come back to me and, well, why do I have these fines? I thought we were fine-free. Well, Cass County is fine-free, but the library that you checked out from is not fine-free. Fines are to be collected by the library, by that other library. How do I get my fines then over to the other library? So
Fine free is not part of the reciprocity agreement, so it's not about the fines.
No, that's just the problem.
Yeah, so the answer to your question, Ferguson Library, sorry, I don't know who I'm talking to, is that yes, no matter what, that the fines are part of are just part of the loaning agreement, and that's just the way it is. The issue that you have, if you are letting people use their other card, is that your staff are not trained to have those conversations to help people understand. Hi, Scott. So it's not the fine that's the issue. That is not part. You don't have to be fine free. We actually have several libraries who are not fine free that are part of the reciprocal borrowing agreement. If you want to talk about reciprocal borrowing, I will put my email in the chat. You're more than welcome. I'll sit on a phone call with you. I'll do whatever. We'll talk about it. Usually where the reciprocal borrowing agreement helps us at Poplar Bluff is we are in very, very close proximity to other places like Donovan and Dexter. And so when you are super close to those places, and we're a hub, so we have a lot of things that maybe Donovan or Dexter don't have. And so their patrons may be coming here. So we have patrons. I actually have one patron who uses all three libraries. And so that, when we started reciprocal borrowing, was why Poplar Bluff chose to do the reciprocity agreement, because it helped our libraries to be that they can just have a Donovan card and check out, and they can just have a Dexter card and check out. And I don't know that Dexter is actually on this agreement, so I apologize. But originally Donovan and Poplar Bluff were part of the reciprocal borrowing agreement. And so I don't have to issue an extra card to a Donovan native. They don't have to keep up with two cards. They can use their Donovan card with us and move on about their business. So that's the purpose of the reciprocal borrowing agreement, at least from my perspective, is that a patron doesn't have to have 2 or 3 cards to use the Missouri Evergreen Libraries. They can use that one. But again, if you aren't training your staff on that and how to deal with, I train my staff that if they see that fine is from Donovan, I cannot help them with that fine. They must contact their library. They can go through the Evergreen app. They can do any of those different things. But even if the fine is on a Poplar Bluff library card, if it says Donovan Regional Library, then that is something that they have to deal with Donovan. And we've had to deal with that some with Dexter as well. So if you're not having those conversations, it can get confusing for staff. And you may not be anywhere close to a Missouri Evergreen Library, so most of the time it may not crop up. From Poplar Bluff standpoint, we've seen it probably more than some others because of our proximity to several other Missouri Evergreen Libraries. Did that answer your question, Scott? And Joni, did that answer yours as well? Again, that's from Poplar Bluff's perspective. So if anybody else is a reciprocal borrowing library and wants to jump on, please do.
And Scott is one of the new MLC libraries, which are all fairly close together. So they're probably going to have some conversations about this.
Yes. And so Scott, because you came in with MLC, you probably already function under these agreements, and that's probably just fine. And you and Steve may want to talk about if you want to be reciprocal borrowing with the outside of Missouri Evergreen with all the 70 other libraries. Joni, yes, you do have patrons with multiple accounts in the Missouri Evergreen system. So for example, a person who lives in Donovan is, because I also serve that county, is eligible for a Poplar Bluff Library card. A lot of our patrons just choose to have one card with whichever location, but I do have a lot of patrons that have multiple cards in our system and choose to do that. Hoopla might be part of that.
Could be.
Oh, sorry. Can I bring up something as a non-reciprocal borrower? We two things actually. One, before we went fine free, we had somebody that decided to take their Carthage card and use it at a local library that was a reciprocal borrower because they didn't have fines and then they didn't have to worry about it. However, that particular library had auto renewal, which is set at the cataloging item level. And when it auto renews, like Rhonda said, it does that in the background all by itself, but then it switches to our policies. So, because the renewal is based on who the card is through. So they would go to this library, check out books, it would renew in the background, and then when they were overdue, they would have fines. And that library didn't have fines. So that was one problem. But the other problem, we are in proximity of a few libraries, and we are a city tax-based library in a county with no countywide system. So we're funded by real estate property taxes. So reciprocal borrowing brings in people wanting to just pick whichever library has the cheapest non-resident fee and then just pick their stuff up there. But anyway, those are just a couple things that come up.
Let me clarify something because I may have been unclear based on the information and questions coming in. They're not, when people are coming from Donovan to Poplar Bluff Library to get a card, they're not getting around that they have fines at Donovan. They're just eligible for 2 cards. And so, for example, we do Hoopla, and I'm not sure Donovan does. So with us, they can have Hoopla borrows. So they're just eligible for 2 cards and can double dip on specific apps and different things like that if they want to. So I apologize if I made it sound like Poplar Bluff is letting people just skate around the fines at other places. They don't get to do that. We just make them go deal with the fines with the other people instead of us. So I apologize if I made that sound incorrect. They're not just getting new cards with us. And if for some reason you find out that someone that has a fine with you has gotten a card with us, please let me know and I will take care of it.
All right, just a couple of other quick reminders. This is almost the end of October. This is your reminder to begin working on deleting patron accounts that have been expired for 3 years. I ran my report like about a week ago. There's a boatload of them to do, and it takes a little bit of time to do it. And so unless you want to be down to the last minute, feverishly trying to delete these patrons that have expired, I would just recommend that you go ahead and run that report and get going on it. It needs to be completed by December 31st, and then Equinox sometime in January, I don't know the date yet, will purge those account records from the database. So I will send out, well, in the minutes, there'll be the correct report to use. You can find that in the circulation training materials section. I think it's called deleting patrons, deleting something. It has the words deleting in it.
Deleting expired patron account instructions.
Thank you, Terry. So the instructions are there. it's just going to take you a bit of time to get to work through them all. So I would suggest you go ahead and get going on that. And then the very last thing is resource sharing. MLC was very brave. They went just straight to resource sharing. So good on them. Like they're saying, they have a larger pull list now than what they might have had before. When they joined MEC, I don't know if you saw the email that Steve sent out. We now have 5,043,805 items in Missouri Evergreen. So they pushed us over into that 5 million thing. So I think that's pretty cool. MLC is alive and doing well. So, all right. Anything else that anybody else feels like we need to talk about today? Okay. All right. With that said, have a wonderful afternoon. We'll